I like to stay current on what's happening in the world of personal finance and personal finance creators. So like you, probably I also watch Caleb Hammer and Ramit Sethi. So I have thoughts on this, and I have thoughts on the whole like personal finance sphere in general. So this is what I got for you. So I know that there are other creators that are also doing, I know Graham Stephan is a big one, and there are other, and I want to say other creators, but so those three are the main that I know about. They're just come up in my YouTube feed. Graham Stephan is a little bit overwhelming for me at times. I just feel like he makes me feel bad about myself financially. And that's my biggest issue personally with watching personal finance content. And I think that a lot of people feel that way, is that personal finance can really hit you at a tough and difficult position, right? Because money, it can be so personal and it can be so tied to emotions. So Caleb Hammer for me is a little bit easier because he's just interviewing other people, right? And I think that his style of interviewing is really positive, and there have been times when I've really been impressed by the way that he handles his guests with just really such humanity. So just to start off again, I try to listen here and there. And I listen with the intent to increase my own education, right? But the thing with Caleb Hammer, and the reason why I think it's easy for me and so many other people to watch them, is because you see these people that are just have like, and obviously the thumbnails are built with clicks in mind to kind of emphasize the height of sort of the drama, and they really do the fact that Caleb is such a, I guess, heartfelt interviewer, do him a disservice. But of course they emphasize the bad stuff. It's like you're burning your future away. It's like you're eating your future, spending your last dollar on fast food. You went through your, I guess, retirement savings. But the thing, so it makes it easy, and I can get into this trap where you watch them, and I watch them and I think, oh, well, I would never do that. Like I might not be doing the best that I can, but I'm certainly not doing that bad. Like I didn't, I'm not living with my parents, paying no rent and having no responsibility, no accountability. Like at least I have a job, things like this where they make me feel better about my own shortcomings. And I don't mean it like that, but I mean it that it's very watchable, because you think, oh, well, I'm not that bad. I might not be doing as well as I want, but at least I'm not that bad. So that can be a problem, I think. But on the positive side, I think it helps me look at my financial situation and say, okay, and know my numbers, just be accountable with my numbers, which I am for the most part. I've kind of learned and trained myself to be that way. However, we can, all of us can be doing better. So I think that's sort of the problem, is that it normalizes this terrible behavior. And he gives his guests a plan, and I know he's had some follow-up interviews. The thing is, change happens so slowly, right? So that's another issue, is that change isn't often that Polaroid, like dramatic before and after. It's very, very rarely that dramatic before and after. And he mentions that he really got disciplined with himself and got out of debt or whatever in 2 years or something. I think his story is that he went very intense. He was young and he was probably just out of college, right? So I know that it's much easier to be very focused and very intense when you're young, when you don't have as many responsibilities. It's not impossible when you're older, but it is a lot harder. So I think that's a challenge as well. I think my favorite interviews, though, have been, again, where he really underscores humanity. I think there was one where he had a guest who was working at a fast food joint, who had just like on that day gotten in a car accident, and the guest was struggling with addiction. I think it was pot addiction. They blurred that part out. But he was almost like he almost stopped the interview like several times. And I think he added a disclaimer that the individual gave complete consent for that interview to be shown. So I think that's a huge, that's a positive that really underscores his humanity towards people. That said, it shows, at least the episodes that I've watched have shown the worst case scenario, right? How people get into these terrible situations without really giving a real life concrete path toward going from a not great place to going to a slightly better place. You forget going from terrible to going to fantastic, but just kind of not great to gradually walking yourself to a better place. And I think that's what so many people are looking for. So Ramit Sethi, I think, is another one. I personally, I met him at FinCon in 2019 in that like sort of 30-minute interaction. He seemed really great, really genuine. And I know he's done a lot of work on himself personally, right? I think when he first came out, he came off as very brusque. This was around 2000. Fun fact, we're actually the same age, he and I. And he had this abrasive style. And I know that he's, again, put so much money and effort into improving himself. And it's shown in his, in the material he's been able to produce. So I've been watching his I Will Teach You to Be Rich podcast, which is aimed towards couples, which is exactly what I needed in the time that I needed. So that was perfect. That was very timely for me, I think. So I've been listening to his podcast in the car with my daughter, who's 14 months. And I think it's just, she'll kind of complain and I'll listen for maybe 20 minutes is the max. We have a 40-minute commute when we go into Jersey, and she'll listen for maybe 20 minutes and then start to fuss, and I'll put on the kids' music. But I think it's important to hear these concepts, to hear these, the numbers, and to know kind of the vocabulary of personal finance, things like compound interest, safe withdrawal rates, the rule of 72, things like that. I think that's more on the personal finance side, on the financial independence side. But I think it's important to know and be exposed to discussions about money really early. And it's a clean and intelligent podcast, so I like listening to it. That said, I feel like on Ramit's podcast, there are just kind of two classes of people. It's either the people that are like, we have $4 million in the bank, but we can't spend money and we feel terrible. Or people that are like, we're millions of dollars in debt and we're still spending $600 on Uber Eats. So that same kind of path because obviously it's the sensational big stories that get the clicks, that get the downloads. But I wish there was something in the middle that kind of walked the line with kind of gradually showing regular people working their way into a better situation, which is why I really love this personal finance community. So on YouTube, this sort of self-reported personal finance community. So with Ramit recently, I was listening to Mindy and Carl's episode. So Mindy from the Bigger Pockets podcast, which I had been listening to as well, again, made me feel bad about myself. I'm like, I couldn't achieve what they were talking about. It just wasn't what I needed at that time. I love listening to Scott and Mindy on the Bigger Pockets Money podcast. I think they're both great interviewers. It wasn't the education I needed at the time. So I was listening to Mindy and Carl, her husband, talking in Ramit's podcast. And I understand that their struggles are struggles. They have a net worth of $4.1 million. They've both stopped working for a paycheck right now. They don't need to work for a paycheck. They're completely more than financially independent. And they're in their 50s and they're like, oh, well, we can't go out to this nice restaurant because we're afraid to spend money. And I'm like, oh, shucks. And Ramit even addressed that he gets a lot of feedback saying that he only features ultra rich people that can't spend money. And he's all about like, oh, the money psychology is the same. And I'm like, no, it's not the same. I understand it's the same principle of the numbers of money don't necessarily change how you feel. That's not been my experience though. In my experience, the numbers very much affect how you feel, because when you see low numbers, you feel bad about yourself. When you see debt, you feel bad about yourself. And that feeling bad about yourself either leads to denial or despair. And denial leads you to go out and spend $1,500 on Uber Eats, and despair leads you to not do anything and go on a crash financial, I call it a financial diet, but crash spending, no spending, and it leads to failure of another kind. So again, what I look for and what I'm really hoping to create is this sort of everyday regular people on this journey that's taken, for me at least, I know it's taken, I want to say it's 7 years that I've been here. I started in 2015, and my net worth has been positive for a bit, but it's nothing remarkable. But I'm just walking through the everyday challenges of life. There's nothing click-worthy is the issue. Like there's no big scandal. There's no gigantic sort of numbers revealed. But that's kind of, I think that's what's so valuable, is the everyday stuff, like going from a negative, $50,000 net worth to a positive net worth, which Rachel Hickey just recently posted a video on how to feel better about yourself. So go check out her video if you are looking for something about regular people just making their way in life and finances. So let me know who you watch. Let me know who you find inspiring and not inspiring and what you need financially at this point. Thanks for watching. Bye.